speaking on the topic education and connectivity for the digital citizens. He is Gordon Swaby, CEO of Edufocal and co-founder of the multi-award winning Edufocal Limited, an innovative online social learning service for students preparing for their PEP and CSEC examinations. Welcome, Gordon. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Wendell. Good afternoon, everyone. And before I begin to introduce Gordon, let us think about a time when students were going to school. They were doing CXC, they were doing their C, they were doing their PEP, they were doing all of their grade 10, 11 courses from primary school or prep school and going into high school. And it was seamless. Now at a time now with COVID, digital and online education has moved to the fore of how we educate our children. It becomes difficult with a child who is distracted and needs to have his friend and environment to learn. And with varying levels of internet penetration throughout the Caribbean, if you're understanding Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and Bahamas have high rates of internet penetration. Jamaica and for example Guyana have that difficulty to contain with in terms of persons getting the internet to the students, and we find that there's going to be a disparity. But then you have leaders in the industry such as Gordon who are pioneering the course in changing how students understand digital education and how they're engaged and how they can be catapulted in this pandemic to being the leaders of tomorrow. So on that note, Gordon, I'll hand it over to you to explain and give your opening statements in terms of where Edufocal is at now as a leader in Jamaica, and how can it pose itself as being a model for Caribbean digital online education. Gordon, over to you.
Wendell, thanks to Wendell for the introduction. Mark, thanks for having me.
Yes.
Thanks to CANTO for facilitating this fireside chat. About 10 years ago, I got a vision and I saw that we were going to have a pandemic, and I built Edufocal for that time. I'm just kidding. But seriously though, it feels that way. It feels like where we are now, we were preparing for this particular period in our history. I mean, obviously nobody could have anticipated this black swan event that, the world is going through and what we're dealing with. But I say to people all the time, we've been around, next year, March, would have been around for 10 years. It's a company I started when I was 21 years old. In that time, I'd say we do easily have raised a little over $1 million, maybe $1 to $1.5 million US, a mixture of equity and debt. And a large portion of that would have happened in the last 2 years. Now, I say to people that if we experienced a pandemic 3 years ago, we being Edufocal would not have been able to facilitate students going online. And I certainly think that the Caribbean region itself would not have been in a place to have any form of serious online learning. No, I'm not saying that to say that the current situation is ideal in terms of the infrastructure is prime or ready for what we're going through. It certainly isn't. And I'm not just talking about broadband or mobile data. I'm also talking about electricity. I could be talking to you right now and electricity may go away. It's not impossible, right? And again, I'm not saying that doesn't happen in developed countries like the USA, but certainly the frequency of it is far more prevalent in our territories. Now, I can't be an entrepreneur and not be optimistic about the future. And when I still remember 56 kbps internet, I still remember dial-up internet. I remember how bad it was, and I remember how frustrating it was to get anything done. But here I am at 30 years old with a workforce of almost 60 people. With a company that is on target to do over $1 million US in revenue this year, in a small country, because we're still operating in Jamaica, right? Also a profitable company. Now, where I see, or where most people see challenges and bureaucracy, I see opportunity, right? Now, when I remember a particular time, Google Maps did not have the ability to download maps on your phone. You couldn't use the maps when you were underground in the subway. And that the reason that they decided to do that was not because of crappy internet. It was simply because there are certain blind spots, certain areas where, just as I mentioned, if you're underground, you don't get good quality connectivity, or you don't get it at all. So they decided to innovate around it. Now,
Right.
when you think about the Caribbean, we don't have subways. You're not thinking about it in that particular context. But I see, for example, spotty internet, bad internet, or no internet as an opportunity to innovate. And while we, for the last, I'd say 3 years, we were not in a position, we being EduFocal, we're not in a position to innovate around those challenges. Becoming better capitalized now is giving us the opportunity to become even greater innovators in our space. When we started the company in 2012, we were just, and I may not use the word just, we were undercapitalized company that, we really were helping kids to prepare for their exams in a fun way using a concept called gamification, right? And gamification is using game-like elements to, help to prepare people. Using game-like elements in non-game contexts, right? So for us, all we could do at the time was, in a way, the bare minimum. We didn't have a lot of gamification features. We didn't have a marketing budget, but we were pushing and grinding to get it done. Now, here we are, 9 years later, a much larger company. We offer a full-time school. Last school term or full-time school had almost 52 kids. In the height of the pandemic, we had 60,000 students that signed up to our platform in a single month. And we had thousands of students using our service on a daily basis, right? So yes, there are deficits, but I'm not a complainer, right? I'm not a complainer, and I will continue to advocate and try and get things fixed, not only for us, but for the industry. And by industry, I'm not just talking about the tech industry, talking about fintech, talking about edtech. I'm talking about all of the emerging industries. And you look at even a country like Guyana. I'm excited about the prospects for Guyana. And yes, there are challenges. Yes, the physical terrain can be challenging to get certain things done. But when you have a child in a remote community that has to walk, they have to walk miles per day to get to school, or they don't go at all, and you can introduce internet into their environment, and they can get quality education from an educator that is in the USA or in Jamaica or anywhere in the world through our platform or any other platform, that's game changing, right? Because so I see the internet as the great equalizer, right? And really truly it's an amazing time to be in education and to be peering education with technology.
Thank you. I mean, Gordon, that is interesting. And I think it is the entrepreneurial spirit that you have, in the sense that you look for the opportunity, you look for the challenges, and then turn them into opportunities. And I mean, just following EduFocal, I've seen, it is just ripe. The time is ripe for its development now. However, and just in the previous session, we find that you have an excellent product, you have an excellent idea. But then to get to that point, to get to that Northern Star, there are regulatory issues. There are issues in terms of getting students or getting individuals to understand the product, right? What have you done? And I mean, as I said, this session is for us to understand EduFocal as a model of success and how it can be replicated throughout the Caribbean. What have you done, and what have been your elements that have come alongside EduFocal to get it where it is at now?
So that's such a great question, Mark, and I wish I had more time to answer all of it. So I try to keep that succinct as possible. But there are different elements. One, I think that corporate governance is extremely important. I think having a strong way of operating, having a strong board that is not just there as for show, but actually an operating board. I mean, my chairman, Peter Levy, Peter is the managing director of BCIC, which is Jamaica's largest insurance company. Peter has been EduFocal's chairman since 2012. Now, can you imagine, or can, or at least you can understand the value that I've gotten from somebody like a Peter, the ability to connect me to other people who can help to push the company forward. That's one. Two, because of the low credit card penetration in the Caribbean, means to pay for things online. And by the way, that's also an interesting issue. Solutions like mobile money have been created to solve that problem. But sometimes the technology is not the problem. Sometimes people are averse to change, right? So sometimes they have a block to it. No, I'm not, no, I'm not interested in that stuff. I just want to pay with cash, right? So for us, for example, our way of solving that problem was building quality relationships with schools here in Jamaica. Prior to COVID, we had people deployed going to schools on a daily basis. We had scratch-off cards that we would leave in schools, and we had a commission arrangement with the school where the cards are scratched. They get a commission, and then the parents can sign up their children at their own leisure. So we had to solve the payment problem, both online and offline. I mean, even getting a payment gateway set up now is still far too complicated for most entrepreneurs running online businesses, right? So, but we had to innovate, and we had to think about, how can we make money come in? Now, the last thing I'd say, to not dig too deep into all the different things that we've done, because it would have been many things, but one of the things that I would say is working with government. Now, a lot of people see government as this, oh, wow, scary, we don't want to do business with government. That's rubbish. At the end of the day, in every country on earth, as far as I know, government is the largest employer of people. Government is the largest spender. So you can't avoid doing business with government. You have to become comfortable with government. You have to speak their language, right? You have to talk about and understand procurement. You have to be registered with the relevant authorities and entities, right? So we worked a lot, for example, in Jamaica with the MPs, right? MPs paid for access to EduFocal in their respective constituencies, and that was a big thing for us because it showed trust, and it obviously created cash flow for the company, even if the payments didn't happen right away. But it was important because when you can't convince a single parent, which is really just a B2C kind of angle, when you can't convince a single parent, you can spend time convincing an entity who will write you a check, and that will really push the mission forward. So, I am very excited now because we have had to kind of dumb down a lot of the things that we wanted to do because we were undercapitalized. But we're now in, I'd say, the final phases of doing our listing on the stock exchange here in Jamaica, which really is a dream come true for me, right? Because we might be in Guyana tomorrow, we might be in Trinidad tomorrow, or a team will move from, say, 56 people to 150 people, not in 2 years, but in 6 months, right? As an example. But the point is, there are dreams and aspirations and ambitions that I've had for years, and I've been patient. I've been patient because I understood timing and I was patient. And it is important. I will not confuse patience with laziness. I was never lazy about doing certain things, but you have to get the timing right. But yes, to answer your question, I'd say those things are extremely important. But yeah, I'm excited about the Caribbean. I'm excited about our prospects. And kind of looking at it from a non-tech, non-entrepreneur perspective, I do believe in CARICOM and the principles of CARICOM. Somebody said something to me once. They said, if you were to close off the Caribbean from the rest of the world, there's nothing that we would need for, because it is all here: gold, oil, arable land, the intellectual capacity of the people. There's literally nothing that we need that we don't have in the Caribbean. And together we are, together we are weak, and divided we are weak, and together we are strong. So again, also looking at it from that perspective, I think CARICOM is important. I think it is important that the Caribbean operates as a single unit versus being, divided and not having one vision. So, that is what I would say is extremely important and something that I will continue to advocate for as an entrepreneur here in Jamaica.
That is Gordon, all of your points I think are just in terms of board corporate governance, I've found sometimes that if you don't have a strong board or have a strong core, your business will fall. It won't progress. There won't be a fresh ideas. It's going to be just a recycling of persons that are sitting down, just being there and having the position to be able to put in the public.
Absolutely.
But for this audience, you couldn't Edifocal. One of a key factor for it not for its success clearly is partnerships, public and private partnerships with the government
Absolutely.
and also with ISPs.
Absolutely.
What, in terms of the audience here and telcos looking to add value to the service? For example, I could see Edifocal developing an app, having an app, and it is a Caribbean app where you're just able to just drop down and you're saying which region you're from and which country you're from, Guyana, Antigua, Barbados, Jamaica, and you're able to see material that is organic to the needs of that country.
Yeah.
How could you guide us as an industry, vendors here, telcos here? What guidance can you give? So if, for example, you're coming to Guyana, you're talking to me as GTT as a provider. I want your product to be able to provide services and add stickiness to my product. What guidance can you give for me in terms of enabling you to be a success here or throughout the region?
So great question, Mark. So one, zero rating has been important for us here in Jamaica. That's something we pay for. We're zero rated on both networks here in Jamaica, both Flow and Digicel. One of the things that I've always been kind of bullish on, which again, we've not been able to do, but it's definitely something that I want to consider and place on our roadmap is SMS-based learning, right? Leveraging SMS to teach students. So you could text a particular number, you get a response. You text a particular number, you get a response, which is a question. Doesn't have to be anything heavy, pretty lightweight. Could be basic math, basic English questions. You respond with a text. And that's just, and it will tell you if you're right or wrong. That's just an example of, where if somebody is in an area where they don't have a smartphone or they don't have good connectivity and they can't consume multimedia content, that is better than not having anything at all. And for me, that adds to the stickiness, for example, of the network, but it also creates goodwill.
Yes.
Edifocal being deployed on phones that are sold by the providers. As an example, if you're selling cell phones, we could become preloaded on the phones. So there's so many different things that we could do. Even using our concept of gamification. Students could win. They could say go do a duel with each other on the platform, and the student that wins gets free data. For 10 days. There are so many different angles where you're incentivizing education, and that creates a lot of goodwill for the providers. And education is not a thing where you don't want to be involved in it. At the end of the day, it only redounds to the benefit of all stakeholders, the country in general, for our students to be educated. In fact, let me not say that it's not just about children, because the other side of our company is corporate learning, right? We create corporate learning content. We have a corporate learning platform for organizations, and that is something that has become a big part of our business. And that is still education. It's not your typical, formal in-school education, but at the end of the day, education is a lifelong thing, right? Yes. As we like to say, from cradle to grave, you will always be a learner. Whether you're learning to get your credentials or you're learning new things in an organization, you always want to be leveling up, right? Your skill set in such a fast-paced and ever-changing world. So for me, the possibilities are endless, and it really is just us sitting at the table with the different stakeholders and looking how we can flesh out and sign on a dotted line for these partnerships. So I'm looking forward to partnering with GTT in Guyana and rolling out something for the students.
that is something that I would welcome. And just to close, because you touched on something touched on the point of corporate learning, and it is something I think for example, I was speaking about in the previous session, Africa has had their digital moonshot project in terms of working with the World Bank, working with the Africa Union, where they are finding entrepreneurs and young and upcoming businesses and investing in them. And in particular, in terms of corporate learning or just community learning.
Mm-hmm.
What, in closing, what would you say is a challenge for corporate learning? Because I'm assuming, again, it comes back to the issues of having good corporate governance and having that as a mission, being able to have a 5-year plan. What is it that you could say for just not only telcos, but for companies in terms of enabling that element of your business, or just that element?
I heard a story once, Mark, and the story goes like this: the CTO was having this, the COO was having a conversation with the CEO, and the COO asked the CEO, "What if we train them and they leave?"
Yes.
And the CEO responded, "What if we don't train them and they stay?" Right?
Yes.
I share that story to say that organizations should see leveling up their employees, facilitating learning opportunities for their employees as an asset, as something that adds to the bottom line of an organization, not something that takes away from it. In other words, it's not a cost center and should not be seen as one. And while you may not see the benefits of leveling up and educating your employees in a month, within 6 to 12 months, you will start to see the benefits on the upside of that. So I'll say that to say that organizations can't afford to not do it. It is something that they should see as an upside and a benefit to their organization. So that would be my response to that particular question.
And just to close for the persons here and for CANTO, because you are the closing session, and you had made a very interesting point about Caribbean being self-sufficient. What could you close on in terms of CANTO, to CANTO the persons here, in terms of us broadening our reach as a collective of telecoms operators, as vendors, and you being a value-added service that needs us? What are your closing words to CANTO, to the persons here, about us being dynamic and developing digital agility?
So I would say that it is important to not try and copy largely what is happening in developed countries. I think it is important to look at what they're doing and borrow from them. But I do believe that the use case for customers of telcos in the Caribbean is a little bit different, and I think it is important to constantly engage stakeholders on the ground. I'll give you a simple example. We have to be doing a lot of customer education around how to use our platform, and it's not just a problem that we have. So, for example, a lot of users confuse signing up with signing in. That's not a problem that they're dealing with in the USA, for example. So we've had to kind of take a step back as a company and look at things differently. Saying that to say that I think that telcos, while they're looking to move fast and to get things done very quickly, it is important that they're talking to the stakeholders, talking to players like us who are becoming, relatively large organizations in the region, to have conversations and that should act as an influence of the decisions that are being made, because thousands of people are logging on every single month to use our platform, and that helps the telcos, right? It means that we're creating more incentives for customers to come online to pay for data. So even from a pure business perspective, I think it is important to continuously engage stakeholders. And again, I want to thank CANTO for inviting me to speak. This is a good first step, and certainly I think it's a path in the right direction.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, Mark.
Gordon, I can tell you this. I can tell you this is the first, but it definitely won't be the last, as I'm sure that as EduFocal branches and sinks its roots throughout the Caribbean and even the world, I hope that it will be the case, that it will be a model of the success of integration between public and private partnerships, education, and also for telcos being the bridge for digital connectivity and digital inclusion. Absolutely. Gordon, thank you for being here. And on that note, your comments have aptly closed this session for CANTO.